Welcome to the Maasto Fitness Podcast. Today, episode 1 of 2025. So, the Maasto Fitness Podcast is a podcast focused on the things you can do off the bike to race faster and safer. I keep these podcasts quick and to the point because personally, I'm busy. I know a lot of my racers are busy. A lot of people are busy. So, I want to keep the podcast quick, precise, to the point, get you the information you need so you can get on to the next thing you need to do while gaining a little bit of education and knowledge in the process. So, like I said, first episode of 2025. Did take a little break, and that break was because after race season, we had a growing family. We had another baby on the way. So with that, our house was too little. I had to make our house bigger as well. I had to grow our house while our family was growing. So focused on the current athletes I had, making sure to take care of them, give them all the training and nutrition and resources they needed and everything else. But then the fun extra stuff like this podcast, I kind of put on the back burner, focus on growing our house. I'm not going to lie, if anyone's done anything like that, man, it takes a lot of research and learning, and it was all new for me. So not only was just like the building, electrical, plumbing, all of that stuff a lot of work, I had to do a lot of reading, a lot of videos, and reach out to a lot of experts as well to just kind of gain the correct knowledge and skills to make sure I did it right and properly. So everyone's safe and nothing's rigged up. So that happened in the fall. Then, like basically the day I got that done, a couple days later, the baby came. So then I took a little bit of maternity leave. So yeah, been away for a little bit, still training myself, of course, but here I'm back to the podcast in 2025, ready to get back at it. We're gonna have them bi-weekly this year, so every other week I'll see one drop. So these will be on Spotify, YouTube. So just make sure you subscribe so when a new one comes out, you can listen, get that knowledge you need, and learn a little bit more about effective ways to train off the bike and how it transfers and nutrition and fueling and all of those things. So with episode number 1 of 2025, I just want to reintroduce myself, a little bit about who I am, what I do, a little bit of my credentials, and then really important, the way I've been able to help athletes be successful racing through training off the bike. Training off the bike, I think, is very important, and it's a piece of the puzzle. You know, we've got the bike setup, time on the bike, then we got training away from the bike, nutrition, getting proper rest, all these pieces. And I really focus on that health and human performance part, the time away from the bike and how that helps you when you're on the bike. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump right into it. I'll just tell you basically a quick overview of me. I have been an endurance coach now, my full-time career for this is year 11 actually, and my wife and I have done it together. We've been triathlon coaches, if you're familiar with that sport, swim, bike, run for over a decade. And this is going to be year 4 of Maasto Fitness, of the off the bike training. So we built that in addition to our triathlon coaching company. And just a little background about me. I grew up in a small town in the Midwest, racing, raced hare scrambles and enduros. When I was later in high school, I was fortunate enough that my parents decided I had good enough grades that I could basically skip a lot of Mondays, and we raced the GNCC series for a couple of years and national enduros. So we have to do that through high school. Exited high school, had a career as an auto technician. It was fun, it was rewarding, but I found out after a couple of years it wasn't for me. My wife, who I was dating at the time, who also raced hare scrambles, we met at the races, was going to school for exercise science. I found it really interesting, so I decided, yeah, let's quit this career as a as an auto technician, and I'll go to school with you, and we'll both just put our eggs in one basket and be students for exercise science, and then we'll figure out jobs when we're done. Sounds good enough. Well, through those years of school, our motorcycle interest kind of faded away. We got out of racing. We ended up selling our bikes, got really into triathlon, swim, bike, run, Ironmans, which if you're familiar with an Ironman, that's a 2.4-mile swim, 112-mile bike, and a marathon. And at the end of college, we had got exercise science degrees. I had a bachelor's. My wife had a bachelor's and a master's in exercise science. Motorcycles were kind of behind us at the time, and we went all in on triathlon, started a triathlon coaching company. And through that journey of education and triathlon, we learned so much. And I felt like when I was a younger racer, I made a ton of mistakes. I didn't understand how to fuel my body. I didn't understand the importance of training off the bike. And then all those things just always came back to bite me. I could hang it out pretty far when I was younger, or push it a bit, but that stuff only lasts so long when you're not when you don't have proper fueling, when you don't have proper training, everything breaks down. So we're following on triathlon. Triathlon's our life. We're working with these amazing racers from all over the world. And then 2021, I get a reach out to start working with people off the bike. And I'm like, well, heck yeah, I would love to, because just reflecting on my previous time when I was younger, everything I know now, I made so many mistakes then. I wasn't good at fueling. I wasn't good at training. I definitely didn't train consistently. And all those things came back to bite me. And I was like, I feel like I could help people, and they could be so much better than I ever was. Start them just so much further ahead than I was. So started working with racers, and then after a year doing that, well, lo and behold, I suddenly am interested in a motorcycle again. So I got a bike, got back into racing myself. Ended up racing Open A. I think I was this a couple of years ago. I was 35. Ended up racing Open A in hare scrambles, getting third in the series that year. Then moved to double A the next year, ended up fifth in double A. And then the following year, which would be 2024, ended up, I think, sixth in the Michigan Enduro Series in double A. So I've had a pretty fun success coming back. And I would say if I just really quickly reflected on one big difference when I was racing in my teens and early 20s, and now in my mid to late 30s, and the fueling, the nutrition, the training, the biggest difference is when I was younger, my parents were always with me. And I would get done with a race and I could like with a hare scramble or an enduro, and I could like barely make it back to the chair to sit. And I would sit there forever and just be exhausted, and I wouldn't eat anything, and I was tired. And then the ride home, I would sit in the back seat of the truck, and it just was like I had an insane headache and I felt horrible. The next day, same deal when I was in high school going to class, felt horrible. Then out of high school, going to my job as an auto technician as a Ford dealer. Oh man, those first couple of jobs just crushed me in the morning. I just felt horrible. Fast forward to now, I understand how to fuel my body, when to fuel, the training. Uh, the biggest difference is when I get done racing, I can actually function. I can drive home. I can get us to where we need to go. And I'm still tired. I'm still sore the next day. I don't feel horrible. And a lot of that has to do with training and nutrition. So while I'm much older, a little bit slower, maybe a little more than a little bit, but a little bit slower, but I feel so much better. And I attribute that to understanding how to treat my body, when to fuel my body, what to fuel my body with, and then the consistent specific training for racing. I'm not training to be a CrossFitter. I'm not training to be a weightlifter. I'm not training to be a marathoner. I'm training to race dirt bikes. And that makes a big difference. Having that correct cardiovascular strength, flexibility, mobility work makes a big difference. So that's real quick about me. More importantly than me, the success I've helped racers with over the years. Every year, work with so many amazing racers from all over. We're fortunate to work with racers internationally, all across the US, everywhere. And with that, every time I work with someone new, I gain a little bit of knowledge. They hit me with a scenario of a roadblock, a hurdle they have, something that's not going right for them, and I'm able to help fix that and then gain my knowledge base. So not only am I an exercise scientist with degrees and certifications and all of that, also with each racer I work with, I learn something new, and I'm able to grow my knowledge base, my experience, and help more racers. So that's been really rewarding. And then, I help racers by giving them specific training for racing. I make sure that, like I said, I'm training them the way we want to train a racer. All those other ways I mentioned are fun ways to train, good ways to stay in shape. But if we're racing motorcycles, we need the specific work. We need to work the correct muscle fibers, the correct intensity, duration, and do the correct training the right times of the year. We need to make sure during race season we're balancing fatigue, racing fatigue, and riding fatigue with the off the bike training. Off season, we need to make sure that we're doing the proper things to make sure our body's becoming stronger and more resilient for when race season hits. With endurance work, we need to make sure we're that aerobic work, whether it's biking, rowing, running, whatever it may be. We need to make sure we're balancing those right. And so that's what I really try to do with the racers. We have multiple training programs, and all of those focus on racers' needs, specific time of the year, and building them up correctly. And then on top of that, we've got fueling, hydration, nutrition resources. We've got a whole swell of resources. I don't even want to start saying them because I feel like I'm going to end up repeating myself. But we've got a whole bunch of resources on fueling and how to make sure you're prepared for a race day and how to prepare your body. So with that, I feel like it really helps racers open their eyes to how to properly fuel. I think one thing that we deal with now more than ever is when you get on social media or YouTube, there's so many different people with these ways of doing things and their ideas of doing things. And this is the best, and this is how I saw success. And it's not really cookie cutter plan, and a lot of it, in my opinion, is just kind of fluff, some type of magic overnight thing. And that's not the way it works. So at Maasto Fitness, we've got the pieces to help make you successful. I've had racers go from like literally DNF in a race one year to being able to finally finish it the next year to winning it the next year. And that's their years of hard work and dedication following the program and getting the training done. And time and time again, I hear from racers just how much better they feel, right? When we race, we know it's tough. We're hanging it out. We're giving it all we've got. But um, sometimes you just don't have enough in your body, and we always want to make sure we're able to kind of string things along and stretch it to our max without hitting that point of overdoing fatigue and where like basically your tongue's in the spokes, you've run out of energy, and that's what we've got at Maasto Fitness. Those pieces to help make it together. So I very much enjoy being an endurance coach. I enjoy racing myself. Competing's been a huge part of my life, actually. My wife and I were just talking the other day. I'm 37. I've literally had a race schedule since I was 10 years old. Every year, I've had a schedule of the events I'm going to do and their dates and how I'm going to do them. So it's part of my life, whether that's been motorcycles, triathlon, mountain biking, running. It's always been something. And I'm on my literally like my third decade of planning my life and around races and competing because I just love it so much. So racer myself, love helping racers. Quick reintroduction of myself as we get started into this year's podcast. Every week, new information, new things for you to learn, new tidbits for you to pick up. And then, like I always say, if you have something you want to learn about you haven't heard on the podcast yet, send me a message on Instagram, send me an email, whatever it may be, and I'll make sure to put it in because I always want to make sure I'm providing content that's useful for racers because I ultimately love racing and I want us to all be healthy, successful, and have good races and races. And people will know that I train people that I race against, and I want to help them be successful because I feel like the healthier and better we are, the better it is for the sport, and the better we can all do, and the better we can push ourselves on race day, which is what I ultimately want. So that's it for week one, you guys, and I will see you next week.